What's up, family? This is Kristen Smallwood, and you're listening to the Thrive with Joy podcast, a special space I've created for us to come and reason together. Each week, I share life lessons and stories that challenge our perspective on how we're managing the relationships with ourselves, God, and others. I'm even inviting some special guests to help us unpack insights on how to experience lasting, harmonious bonds that abound in grace, forgiveness, and love. Let's get into it. What's up, family? Thank you for joining me back in the room for another episode. Let me just say this. Adulting is for the birds. If I had to rate it, I would give it a half a star and not recommend it to anybody. As kids, why were we in such a rush to get to this stage? I remember pleading with God to hurry up and make me an adult so I could live on my own and make my own decisions. What in the world was I thinking? There are times now where I literally want to be transported back to the days of my youth when the only thing I had to worry about was going to school, staying awake during Spanish class, and making sure I changed into my play clothes when I got home in the afternoon. Because I don't know about you, but I love my childhood. When I grew up, life was simpler. We didn't have a lot of technology, so we had to be creative and use our social skills. We were always outside, playing games like Red Light, Green Light, and Mother May I, Two Square, and Hopscotch. Back in the days when they had show and tell in school and you got to bring your favorite toy and share it with your classmates. You know what I'm talking about? Back when they still taught cursive writing? Even TV was educational. Watching Reading Rainbow, Teen Summit, and all those after school specials kept our attention. Anybody remember pencil fighting? When one person would hold their pencil sideways and the other person had to use the eraser end of their pencil to try and break the other pencil in half. And you could never beat the kid whose parents spent that extra money and bought them those thick black warrior pencils. All that money our parents spent on school supplies, and we made a game out of breaking up the pencils. Even dating was easier back then. When I was a teenager, we didn't have to do all this stuff these teenagers are doing today, like these elaborate prom proposals and 80,000 Snapchat messages and subliminal TikTok videos just to say they like each other. I came from the era where if you like somebody, you cut through all the pomp and circumstance and got right to the message. You wrote them a short note to ask them if they would be your boyfriend or girlfriend and gave them 3 options: yes, no, or maybe. If you checked the yes box, then it was immediately made official that you were in a committed relationship. Whoever you were talking to prior to that moment no longer mattered. It was like your first unofficial marriage. If you checked the no box, it was automatically assumed that you and that person would never talk again. It was an unspoken rule that if that person said no to you, after you garnered up every ounce of courage you had in your body to put your heart on the line and give them that letter, and they rejected you, then you had a right to act like they no longer existed. If you were on your way to class and it was only you two walking in the hallway, you had a right to not even look their way. And if by chance they told one of their friends about that embarrassing experience, you had a right to deny the whole thing. Listen, I have been the victim of the no at least twice when I was a kid. Well, technically, the first time it wasn't an actual no. So I sent this little light-skinned boy in my PE class my interest letter and gave him the standard yes, no, maybe boxes at the end of the letter for him to make a decision. Because back then, there were no rules as to who had to approach who first. So I took the initiative to try and kickstart this teenage romance. When I got the letter back, this boy had added a 4th box that said, I just want to be friends. I said, wow. Shattered dreams and broken hearts, honey. I couldn't even be mad with him. I feel like he said to himself, I don't know if giving her a flat out no is a good idea because I'm not sure how crazy she is. See, we played dodgeball against each other in PE, so I feel like my competitive nature may have scared him off a little bit. I don't know. It was something about the way I threw that ball at his head that probably caused him to hesitate on the relationship. Oh well, that was his loss, but I forgave him for his ignorance. Then the second time I got a no, it wasn't even from the guy. It was from his girlfriend. Now, in my defense, I didn't even know he had a girlfriend until she confronted me. The crazy thing is, I was cool with the girl. We weren't friends, but we were acquaintances. So when she approached me, I could tell she was bothered, but she wasn't trying to cause a scene. So she was like, "Hey, did you give my boyfriend so and so a letter asking him to go with you?" In the most shocked voice I could muster up, I said, "What letter? Somebody wrote your boyfriend a letter? Girl, let me see. Give it here." Because people are always lying on me. So I'm standing there reading this letter as if I didn't write it. And this is the first time I'm seeing these words. I was like, see this line right here? This don't even sound like me. Have you ever heard me say something like this? And this ain't even my handwriting. Did he say I gave him this letter? She was like, no, he said it was left on his desk, but it said it was from you. I was like, See, this is why I can't stand people, okay? I can't believe somebody did this. This is so trifling. Listen, I gave that girl 1,000 reasons as to why her thinking that I was the one that wrote that letter was the dumbest thing she had ever done in her life. Then I proceeded to sow seeds of doubt in her mind about the state of her relationship. I was like, see, I don't know if this relationship is good for you because it has you out here spinning right now. As far as we know, he could have wrote the letter just to see if you would get jealous. He probably playing with your mind, girl. But don't worry about it. I'm going to keep this letter and find out who is trying to set me up and cause you to act out of character. Thank you for telling me, because I'm going to handle this. Don't worry about it. I got it. Honey, by the time that girl walked away, I had her so confused. She thought she had wrote the letter. I haven't written another letter since. It was too much drama for me. I was scarred. But that was the norm when I was coming up. Now, I always respected those who got the "will you go with me" letters and chose the maybe box, because what that said to me was they were wise. They wanted to give themselves adequate space to carefully think through whether or not they wanted to be in the relationship, while also giving the asker space to prepare their heart for possible rejection. Now, some may say they were just prolonging the inevitable if they already knew they weren't interested in the person. And checking the maybe box was a cruel game of tease that gave the other person a false sense of hope. I could argue an opposing thought that said the person wasn't trying to be a tease, but may have really been open to being in a relationship with that person who sent the letter, but there were some things they needed to think about first. Maybe they had gotten a letter from someone else and they were weighing their options. Maybe they needed time to think of a more polite and compassionate way to let the person down, like my boy from PE. Either way, selecting that box provided them with space and time to do some soul searching and land on a decision that was best aligned with their own desires. If the author of that letter was smart, they would have also used that time to plan out how they would respond to lessen the embarrassment and keep their pride intact if the person came back with a no. Now, even if you have never received the classic "will you go out with me?" check yes, no, or maybe letter, you have experienced some level of rejection in your life. Whether it was from someone you were interested in dating, a promising employer, a potential friend, a loan officer, or even a family member. No matter who it was that delivered that shot of pain to your heart, all you really wanted was for them to make you feel valued, understood, and accepted. I thought that as an adult, it would be easier to handle rejection because, unlike our younger selves, we have had enough experiences with it that we should have picked up on some coping techniques along our journey to make us better equipped to take the blows, right? Well, I proved myself wrong with that theory when I tried to get into grad school for the first time. Here's what happened. So after I graduated undergrad, I knew that I had not identified the right career path that was going to be fulfilling for me. I graduated with an accounting degree, even though I had determined during my junior year of college that I never wanted to be an accountant. At that point, I had too many credits under my belt to change courses, so I just decided to drag myself through those final semesters and committed to reevaluate my life after school was over. Somewhere between attending local comedy shows and theater productions to working with the performing arts ministry at my church, I rediscovered my passion for writing, acting, and even found a newfound love for directing. But I knew if I really wanted to turn that passion into a profitable career, I needed to hone my skills. So I decided I was going to apply to the Masters in Fine Arts program at the North Carolina School of the Arts. The North Carolina School of the Arts is one of the top ranked performing arts schools in the country. And what I loved the most about their graduate program was that you spend roughly 75% of your school hours working on actual productions. At the end of the program, they also help you find work in the industry, and you get to use the production experience from your coursework to help solidify your professional resume. Now, the school's acceptance rate is about 33%, which means only a third of the people that apply each year get in. For the particular program I was applying for, at that time, they only admitted about 6 students per year. So I knew it was highly competitive and the odds were against me, given that I had no previous formal training. Everything I knew about the business up to that point was self-taught and God-led. But I was optimistic in spite of the odds. So I put in the application, completed the day-long in-person interview process, and held my breath while they decided my fate. A couple weeks later, I get a letter in the mail that said, after careful consideration of your interview and application materials, the admissions committee is unable to offer you admission at this time. I was heartbroken. In an attempt to grow from that experience, I decided to reach out to the person I interviewed with to get some feedback on what they thought were the key weaknesses from my application, because I was determined to not let that no be the final say on my career in theater. The committee member informed me that the main reasons why I wasn't chosen was because I lacked theater experience in a professional environment. If I wanted to strengthen my chances of getting into their program, I should look for some positions or do some volunteer work at the theaters in my area and even take some training courses at the local community colleges. So I did just that. I joined a couple theater groups in my area and served as a stage manager, an assistant director, and a director. I even got paid for some of that work. I took a creative writing class to sharpen my writing skills, a lighting technician class to understand how the different lighting effects impact the production, and several other specialized courses so I could be educated on the various aspects of a production. In addition to that, I mounted several of my own productions where I was the writer, director, and producer. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm knocking it out of the park. There is no way they can look at my resume now, not notice the growth, and see the intentional efforts I have put into becoming a certified theater professional. 3 or 4 years have now passed since I submitted my first application, and I felt like it was time to try again. So I go through all the necessary steps of submitting the application, going through the interview process, but I feel different this time. I feel more confident than I did before. I know the language now. I understand how things are supposed to work now. I feel like I can finally talk intelligently on whatever topic they bring up in this interview. So I'm proud of how I represented myself. So I walk away and I leave it in God's hands. I'm telling myself, you got this, girl. It's a done deal. You ever had that feeling where you just know you gave your best effort and you left it all on the table? That was me. 4 or 5 weeks passed by and I haven't heard anything. So I'm starting to get a little anxious. I'm thinking it must be taking so long because they're preparing my offer letter. Surely that takes longer to write than the rejection letter, because I'm assuming they are not only going to send me a letter, but it's going to come with a packet of information, and that takes a little more time to put together. So that must be what the delay is, right? So I wait another week or two, and finally I get the letter. Now, it was in a small envelope, but I'm still thinking to myself, this is just part one of the offer. The welcome packet must be coming in a separate envelope. So I get in the house and I open the letter and I read the first few statements, which, like most letters like this, include a warm salutation and thanks for applying to the school or program or position or whatever. And then I got to those famous 3 words that always seem to send shots of rejection running through a reader's heart. After careful consideration. I didn't even read the rest of the letter. I was too busy having deja vu. I had to check the date on the letter to make sure they didn't accidentally resend the first letter again. No, it was a new letter, but with an old response. I didn't even realize I was crying until the water hit the paper. So I'm standing there like a teenage girl who just got told by her love interest that he just wants to be friends, trying to figure out where I went wrong. Then I reread those 3 words after careful consideration, and I started to get upset. I'm thinking, there is no way these people carefully considered me in this decision. There is no way they considered the fact that I did everything they told me to do and more, and I still didn't earn a spot in their program. There is no way they considered the years that I waited to make sure I gained enough valuable experience to make the most of that opportunity. There's no way they considered the sacrifices I made with my time, volunteering on shows I didn't even want to work on, or spending my own money to fund the shows that I wrote and still said no. Their response felt anything but considerate. Have you ever gone through that? A situation where you invested all of your energies into trying to make something work, trying to build a connection or have an experience, or even felt like you had a promising shot at it working out for your good, only to be shot down and turned away? Maybe you were passed up for a job or dismissed by family members or excluded from an experience with friends. Maybe you have even received that dreaded rejection letter with that 3-word phrase so many companies use as a default response to shattering your dreams. Now, I want to believe that their intent is to let you down as courteously as possible. It's their way of trying to say they were responsible in their efforts to examine all of the information they had available to them, and the conclusion that they landed on was the only one that made the most sense for them and you. However, that message rarely gets received with the grace in which it was sent. It always feels detached from any careful thought or a sound judgment, which makes accepting the rejection that much harder. I mean, how do those words help me reconcile in my heart that your no doesn't mean that I'm no good or not good enough? How do I accept this outcome and move on without holding a grudge? How do I pursue contentment when I feel so unwanted? Here are a couple things I'm learning to help me adapt to a more positive mindset when I'm faced with rejection. The first thing I'm learning on this journey of pursuing contentment in the face of rejection is sometimes rejection can be a gift. As much as we want to be accepted and valued, we have to realize that we don't belong everywhere. And that's a good thing. You're not supposed to fit into every group or be compatible with everybody. We are not chameleons. We are not created to blend in to every environment we're placed in. The truth is, chameleons don't even belong to every environment they end up in. They have the ability to adapt to their environment for survival purposes. When they're placed in an environment that they don't belong in, they don't change their color so they can become a part of the family. They change their color so the predators in that environment won't eat them alive. They are just trying to stay hidden long enough to escape to a safer place. They understand that being rejected in that moment is a gift. Now, I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm okay with that because my thought is they have no idea what they're missing out on, okay? In order for me to keep that mindset, there are certain people I don't ever need to be affiliated with. Because let's be clear, sometimes when someone says they don't want to be with you or hit you with that, it's not you, it's me, it really is them. Maybe their newfound self-awareness is a gift that you might be blocking. You're looking for validation and they're giving it to you. They are confirming the fact that they are not equipped to handle what you bring to the table. And if you proceed with that relationship, whether business or personal, the only thing they're capable of doing is mishandling you. Maybe they're not mature enough to recognize your great qualities, and staying with them will just cause you to dim your light just to make them feel more adequate. That man or that woman tried to tell you they couldn't be trusted. Maybe they didn't verbally say it, but every act of rejection, ignoring your calls, not prioritizing time with you, being inconsiderate of your feelings, was them screaming, "I cannot be trusted with your heart." But we ignore that voice. And now you riding around in a car at midnight, dressed in all black, scouring the neighborhoods, trying to figure out if your significant other is really visiting with their mother or if they're up to no good. You in the car crying, listening to Tony Braxton albums, trying to figure out how to unbreak your heart or at least break their car windows. Or maybe you were rejected for that dream job and you are trying to make sense of that lost opportunity. The reality could be that the company that you are so desperate to get a job with is not structured in a way that will allow your gifts and skills to fully thrive in their environment. It may all seem great on paper, but you may get in there and recognize that the information posted on their website is a complete contradiction to how that company actually functions. We've all heard of people who have found themselves in that position where they landed a position that they had been dreaming about forever, only to find themselves weeks, months, or even years later sitting around asking themselves, who do I work for? This is not what I signed up for. Where's all the care and compassion for the teammates that we promote in our commercials and on the ads? Where is the consideration and focus on the client that we promised? Then they start to wish they had been rejected from the start because now they hate going to work. What was once a sweet dream is a horrible nightmare. Sometimes rejection is God's way of protecting us from those scenarios, and the best thing we can do is take the gift and be on our way. There's this old saying that says you shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. In other words, when someone offers you a gift, instead of trying to make sense of it or find fault in their actions, just be grateful. Being thankful for whatever unknown circumstances they just spared you from. I lost respect for the boy who gave his girlfriend my letter for her to come and address me instead of doing it himself. Had her and I not been acquaintances, that situation could have gone totally different. I'm sure he was aware of how petty and emotional teenage girls can be, so why wouldn't he consider that when determining how to respond to my letter? What started as a simple question could have ended in a violent exchange. Why put either of us in harm's way like that? It was clear he didn't really care about either one of us. Even though his no hurt me, I recognize now that it was a gift in disguise. Which leads me to the second thing I'm learning as I travel down rejection road. And that is, it's okay to allow rejection to hurt you, but don't let it defeat you. It's expected and acceptable to feel hurt when you have been rejected. The hurt allows us to deal with the reality of the situation because it confirms that we had a real experience. The pain won't allow us to pretend like it didn't happen, no matter how much we try to convince ourselves of that fact. That's why you can't get hurt in your dreams, because they aren't real experiences. You can fall off a cliff in your dreams and land on a mountain of rocks. When you wake up, you're not going to feel any pain from the impact of your body hitting those rocks because you didn't actually have that experience. It was all in your head. At most, you might be tired when you wake up from dreaming all night, but you won't be hurt. But when real life experiences hurt us, we can't ignore it. We feel every ounce of that pain. No matter how much you want to roll over and go back to sleep, you won't be able to get rid of that feeling until you address it. The good thing about hurt is, it's temporary. It's not designed to last forever. The pain of it is supposed to trigger you to search for healing. The intensity of it should drive you to take the necessary steps to try to find relief. During that healing process is where you build your resilience and endurance. So if you ever have to deal with that particular pain again, you've now built a tolerance for it and it doesn't impact you the same way next time. So the hurt can be helpful, but defeat is unacceptable. When you allow yourself to be defeated, you close the door on the possibility of healing. Defeat is a terminal state. It marks the end of a thing. When you decide that you've been defeated, you are ultimately saying you no longer have the power or capacity to overcome. You've thrown in the towel. That's what happens in boxing matches when fighters want to end the fight. Throwing in the towel lets everyone know that they have reached their limits and have nothing left to give. They don't believe there is anything else they could possibly do to be victorious. They are no longer going to engage with their opponent and they accept their loss. If we take that stance after we've been rejected, then it would keep us from ever trying anything else again. At least if you're hurt, you can still fight and keep trying. Listen, the first time Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield's ear during their boxing match, you can't convince me that he wasn't hurt. I was hurt, so I can't imagine what kind of pain he was in. I know it had to be excruciating because the minute Tyson pulled his teeth out of that 200 plus pound man, he turned into a professional ballet dancer. The way Evander Holyfield jumped up on his tippy toes and spun around let me know everything I needed to know about how much that bite must have hurt. It would have been easy for him to throw in the towel and be like, I'm done. I don't get paid enough for this craziness. I even saw an interview where he talked about the incident and he said he was hurting so bad, the ref walked over and asked him if he was okay and whether or not he wanted to stop the fight. And he was like, no, I'm not done yet. I owe him some licks now. That pain motivated him to keep fighting. It wasn't until Tyson bit him the second time that the refs disqualified him and called the fight. Tyson could have bitten a chunk of Holyfield's forehead off, and I believe Holyfield would have still wanted to finish that fight. He understood that defeat was not an option. No matter how hurt he was in that moment, he knew it was temporary, and he would heal from it. But he wasn't ready to forfeit his opportunity in experiencing the glory that came with beating Mike Tyson. Now, admittedly, rejection often feels like a punch in the face. But if we can learn to take that hit and keep on trying, we live to fight another day. The last lesson that I'm learning is that the best yes that I can get is the one I give myself. I can't control how the world sees me or whether they will accept me as I am. I can, however, control how I see myself. Rejection has a way of triggering our insecurities and making us feel like we don't deserve the very thing we are pursuing. The sting of it can make you feel worthless and cause you to question your every ability. If we're not careful, we will allow the weight of rejection to erase every dream we have ever had. When I didn't get accepted into the graduate program the first time, I could have easily allowed that no to discourage me and give up on my dreams of becoming a theater professional. Instead, I decided to prove to myself that I had what it takes to be successful in that space. Their rejection gifted me with the motivation I needed to invest in myself and grow my craft on my own terms. I would have never done those things if they had said yes the first time around. When they rejected me the second time, I definitely had my moment of frustration because I thought the time and energy and money that I had spent preparing to reapply to the school was wasted. But after careful consideration, I realized I was fighting so hard to get validation from that school to help make me feel like I was a legit theater professional, when in reality, I had already become one. I had already produced my own shows and worked on shows produced by others while waiting to get into their program. All of these things I thought I needed to make me believe I belonged had already manifested for me. But I was too busy focusing on getting a yes from them that I didn't even realize it. The yes I had given myself when I decided to believe in my potential and keep pursuing my dreams was already working in my favor. What am I saying? Oftentimes, we're so busy looking for validation from other people that we can't appreciate what we have already accomplished and celebrate the valuable things that we possess that already make us great. When we say yes to ourselves, we're ultimately saying that we believe that we deserve good things, we have the capacity to obtain good things, and we have the ability to produce good things. When someone comes along and tries to disagree with those facts, we are now empowered to challenge their perspective and therefore lessen the impact of their rejection. So the next time we hear no, we won't interpret that to mean that we are no good or not good enough. We will interpret that to mean that that person or that opportunity is not the one for us. And if they're not the one, then that means the one is still out there waiting for us. That should motivate us to keep trying. You don't need a yes from everybody. You just need one person to accept you as you are and to commit to love you the way you deserve. You just need one person to believe in you enough to give you an opportunity to show off your talents and skills for the first time. Sometimes we have to be that person for ourselves and create our own opportunities. The funny thing about this story is I finally got my master's degree, but it wasn't in fine arts. The rejection I received from that experience actually helped me redirect my career in a way that is proven to be even more beneficial. I could have easily applied to another school's fine arts graduate program, but what that moment taught me was that the education I really needed was bigger than just theater. I accepted the fact that there is more than one way to arrive at a destination. So I decided to pursue a degree in organizational leadership, which is transferable across all industries, while still increasing my real world experience in theater. This new path helps me not only pursue new opportunities that would not have been previously available to me, but create opportunities for others. Listen, every rejection is a lesson, an opportunity for us to reassess how we view ourselves, to be reminded of the fact that we are not defined by other people's inability to understand, appreciate, or handle our uniqueness. Our worth has already been solidified because we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We just have to be intentional about tapping into that greatness when we experience these hard moments. The best way to do that is to prioritize our own needs, give ourselves space to heal, and carefully consider how we can move forward in a positive way. Be encouraged, and remember, rejection is not a reflection of your worth, but a reminder that your yes is still out there waiting for you. So go get it. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with a friend. Post about it on social media, or feel free to leave a rating and review. And of course, follow or subscribe to the Thrive with Joy podcast on your favorite streaming platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts, to make sure you're notified when new episodes are available. All new episodes are released on Mondays. Until next time, family, I pray that God bless you to live in peace and thrive with joy.